Miter joints are simple, but it doesn't mean they're easy, right? Think about it. You have 8 cuts at 45 degrees that all need to come together to make a perfect box. Now, layout lines are a lot harder to hit with an angled blade, and if you cut one board slightly shorter than another, all those errors can compound, leaving you with a big gap in a corner or two. I know we've all had that experience. And then what about grain wrapping? How do you maintain that grain wrap so it looks like one board all the way around the box? Well, today I wanted to walk you through all the tips and tricks I know for miter joints so you can get seamless, perfect joints every time. So let's head over to the table. So I want to talk about grain wrapping first. Grain wrapping is where the wood appears to seamlessly go around all 4 sides of a box. Now, because a miter joint doesn't show any end grain, it's a phenomenal way to do mitered boxes. It makes your box look super pro, looks really, really cool. Now, you can't do this just with one board, because if you chopped it up into 4 pieces, you're gonna have 3 matching corners, but then your 4th corner is gonna be a big mismatch. So we do it by resawing a board. And if you don't know how to do that, I have a great video called 4 Ways to Resaw a Board with and without a bandsaw. It makes resawing, you know, a little bit simpler for you. So we're gonna go ahead and get started here on a table saw. I'm gonna kind of show you how to grain wrap throughout this whole video as I show the other parts that make your miters a lot better. So stick with me here and we'll get through it all the way to glue up, and you'll see exactly how I get that grain wrap. All right, so this is how this layout works, is I have a side and then a front, and then it wraps just like the name, a side and a front. And you can see the side doesn't line up with the front, so we need to resaw it obviously before we cut these pieces. I have, like I said, a great video on how to resaw. I'm gonna do this on the table saw by marking the center of my board. This is really easy to do with a marking gauge. I just guess at center, and then I'll take my marking gauge from one side and then the other, and you can see that is going to be the center right in between those lines. And because your blade is whatever thickness, an 1/8 or 3/32, just want to shoot for middle, because you're going to end up planing this anyways, so they're going to end up being the exact same size. You want to just take a little bit at a time. I like to take 3/4 of an inch at a time, flip my board, ensuring my same face is against the fence over here, flip it again, raising the blade another 3/4 of an inch till we get almost to the middle. You don't want to take the middle, because then you just have a board that partway through your cut is going to be released. So cut almost to the middle, and then you can just break it off, and that'll just come off in the planer when you plane it. So let's resaw these boards. We'll talk about our next step, which will be cutting them up. All right, so of course in the planer we lost our markings, so I wrote it on the top edge. That way I would remember which way everything went and then relabel them when they came out. This is important because when you resaw a board, it's going to match in every direction, both up, down, left, right, back, front, but you need to remember which order they go in. We are now going to remove our pieces. We need to remember that the things we do to one board, we have to do to the other in the same order. And so I put in my 60-tooth CMT thin curve blade that we carry over at kmtools.com. We're going to cut these at 90 degrees now. We're not going to cut our miters yet, but I'm going to show you a way to get a perfect miter without losing any more material after this 90-degree cut. So we're going to use a stop block, also over at kmtools.com. These videos are not sponsored and supported by viewers like you heading over to our website, so I really appreciate you go checking it out. We're going to set up our stop block, and what that means is here you can see this is the way our boards are going to go. They match this way, and they also match this way. Look, exact same thing both ways. And so what we're going to do, you can see that the side piece is the first cut here. So we're going to do that cut to release them. We're going to set our stop block at the correct distance, and we're going to do both the same way with the same edge facing against your fence. Once we do that, we'll get out our miter sled and do the 45. All right, my next tip is get one of these digital angle finders. This is the one we carry on our website. Lots of companies make them. I'll link ours down below, but get one. It's a game changer for you. The other thing too, here's a great tip from Chris Salamone and Sean Boyd, which is if you undercut your miters like 49.99 degrees, if there is an error, it's going to be moved to the inside of the joint, not the outside. So if you undercut them just slightly, that can help you with some air, but these digital angle finders are amazing and I love them. real accurate and helps you get perfect cuts. My next tip is over on the crosscut sled for how to remove material without losing any material. Okay, whenever I need to make a miter that really counts for some, real nice box I'm making or anything, I like to make a new zero clearance insert. And the reason is when you're using your sled, you could have had thick kerf and full kerf blades and different types of teeth, and you end up with a kerf that is not a zero clearance. So you may have some blowout at the end of your miter, and it's really hard to line this cut up with a tilted blade. So all you need to do is take a sacrificial piece of wood like this and some double stick tape, and then you're gonna cut through it once with the blade already tilted exactly where you want it to be, and that's gonna show you how to line up your cut. So now this is where it makes cutting your miters perfect and seamless, right? So I can take this back corner and line it up perfectly with that line, and I know I'm not gonna lose any of my grain wrap, and I'm gonna keep as much material as possible. Then I'm gonna take a stop block here, and we're not gonna move this until we've done both of our long pieces, both D and B, because that's gonna ensure these pieces stay the exact same length. So what we're gonna do is make a cut on this side without moving the stop block, rotate it around, and then we're gonna do this side, same thing with B, and that will ensure, because one of the ways that people get gaps is their pieces end up getting different lengths, even by just a tiny amount. So let's make these cuts. We're then gonna do the same thing with our shorter pieces. We're just gonna line that corner up right with that edge and make both cuts, and then we'll have a box that's ready for glue up. So as you can see, we've maintained our grain wrap, and it is time to glue these boxes up. Now, this is one of those times where you don't really need clamps. You can use clamps to pull it into square, but the best way to do it is blue tape. And I'm gonna take you over to my assembly table and show you. But the way I get this started so that my box glues up really even is I use a straight edge, like my table saw fence. So I push everything right up against my table saw fence, make sure everything lines up, make sure it's nice and flat against there, and then I'll take a few pieces of blue tape and put them across the pieces just like this. And there's a little bit more to do, which we will do at the assembly table, but this is a great way to ensure that everything stays together in the right way and you get a real nice successful glue up here. One of the things you really want to watch out for when you're doing this is this from up top can look like they're together, but it's actually kind of up above. That's a real extreme version of it, but it can even be just a little bit. So this is why a table saw or your crosscut sled is a great place to do this, because you know this is super flat and your table is flat. So if you push down on them real good and push them together and then also push against your fence, you're going to get them to line up just perfectly. Once you have these nice and straight, I like to add some tape that goes across the first piece of tape. It just gives a little bit of added strength and stability. You don't want a piece of tape coming off in the middle of a glue up. Then once you have that done, what I like to do, it's not necessary by any means, is I like to take tape and put it on the inside of my miters, because that is where all your squeeze out is going to go, and this saves you a heck of a lot of cleanup time later. And the way I do it is I put it straight across that line. You want to make sure you're not in your miter at all, so you want to be even like just a hair's width outside your miter. And then you don't want any tape getting in the way of your glue up being flat. So then once I have them all taped, I'll flip it over, and taking like a razor blade or my marking knife, I will trim that piece off so that it looks like this and is very nice and clean. You don't want to go crazy with glue in these because it's going to squeeze out all over the place. So let's get this ready for glue up, and I'll show you all the tricks for getting a perfect glue up. Okay, now we have everything ready, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna just put a little bit of glue, because remember, these are gonna get real tight, and then look at how satisfying this is. Boom, just folds up into a perfect square. At the end, we're gonna throw blue tape on this. You see some clamps here. Those are gonna be to pull it into square if needed. I'm gonna show you how to check for that, and just to make sure that last joint is closed up if you like. Blue tape has a little tiny bit of elasticity to it, so it actually gives pretty good clamping pressure. So when I say a little bit of glue, I mean just a little bit of glue. It's gonna really get tight in there, so you just wanna get just enough to fill your joint. and create just a tiny bit of squeeze out. You'll see, like, look at this. I'm gonna squeeze this here. See a little bit of squeeze out there. You're gonna get a good joint regardless. So you just wanna get a little bit of glue. And the great part about having this blue tape here is that you don't have to be too clean with it here. You can get a little bit sloppy, you know? Get a little messy. You can feel it even get tighter here because now you have glue in those joints. So when you get to this last one, you really want to make sure those corners are lined up before you put your tape on there. I like to wipe away any excess glue here just so that it stays clean up later. And when you pull it down, you want to kind of stretch it. Now, if we did everything right, we should have a square box. Now, the easiest way to check for square is to go corner to corner with a ruler, 23.5 centimeters, 23.5 centimeters. Should be right. You can check with a square. Yeah, that box is really, really square. So we're gonna set that aside to dry. One of the ways to fix this, if you were out of square, is you can take a clamp and put it on the corners like this and pull it into square. This one is really square here, so we don't have to do that. We're gonna go ahead and let this dry. You wanna be careful of your squeeze out on the bottom here. You can see I got squeeze out in my corners. So you can clean that up now if you want. Save you a little bit of hassle later. Make sure it's not dripping. We're gonna set that aside to dry and do our last box. We got tape off, everything is clean, it's looking really good. Wait till we throw some finish on, you'll really see how this grain wrap came out, but it looks really good. Everything's super clean because we put that tape on the corners. The inside's really clean. If you gotta clean up a corner, you use something like this glue scraper or a chisel, get any last little remaining things. You know, one of the things I forgot to say is before you do glue up, it's real good to lightly sand the inside with like some 150. Usually the inside of boxes aren't that visual, so you don't need to go crazy on the sanding, but it is good to sand the inside of things before glue up just to save yourself a little bit of time and hassle when you're finishing because it's hard to get in there once it's all glued up. So let's head over to the bench. I'm going to show you how to clean up your miters and how to fix gaps if you have them. Okay, now first you're going to want to start by cleaning up the tops and bottoms of your box. I've already cleaned this one up with a block plane. The other way to do it would be to take a sheet of sandpaper and sand it lightly. You want to attach your sandpaper with like a little spray adhesive and make sure that it's on a flat surface. And then you would just go slowly. You want to be careful you're not putting too much pressure on one side of the box. And you want to go around in a circular motion. That works really good. I think the most accurate way to do that would be with a block plane. Now you want to be careful that you're not going off the side because when you get to the edge of your miter, it's going to cause blowout. It's never good to go this way. So what I like to do is I will go turn with the boards just like this. So I'll kind of clean up, get to the middle, just sort of do my corners, and then when I get to a final pass here, I come around like this. And this will give you nice clean corners. Do a few passes just to clean up the corner closest to me, and then I'll skip over and do the same thing here. And then I'll start in the middle and just kind of turn the corner with my hand plane. And that way I'm not blowing out your edges. Nothing is more frustrated than after a glue up ruining a piece because it took so much work to get there. But look at that. That was, I mean, a total of 30 seconds. And that is very cleaned up. Now, when you get to the edges or the sides, same thing. You could use your sander, or if you are confident with your hand plane, you can use that. What you want to do is check your grain direction, right? And the good thing is with a grain wrap, and this is going to look a lot better here in a second, the grain wrap, is you can see that the board is like one continuous board. So once you figure out which grain you need to be planing with, you can just continue to spin the box in that direction. You're always going to be going with the grain. I can see my grain comes off this way, so I'm going to plane this way, so that way I'm going correctly with the grain. Okay, now I'm gonna show you a clip here. I made this jewelry box and I had a gap in one of the trays. And a great way to fix this, you take anything round, because any steel is gonna be harder than wood. So like your screwdriver, take like this part of the handle of your chisel, especially if it's longer than that one, or a burnisher, and you're just gonna roll your edges over like this. And this is going to fix any gap to make it look really seamless. And then it's time to clean up your corners. The other thing too is if you have a gap that's really big, you can do glue and sawdust and kind of push it in there, make that corner like the back of your box. But you can see just rolling it over makes a really, really big difference. And then to clean it up, you can use a block plane, but the thing is you don't want to go all the way through because you can get tear out up here. So just count your strokes and go around in a circle like this, and then same thing, you come back the other way. And you get a nice rounded corner. The other thing you could do is a little sandpaper, is you just go around like this. A broken rounded corner, that's what they call it, breaking the corners when you take the edge off, is gonna look so much better in a finished piece and give it that sort of tactile feel that makes a big difference. So we're gonna go ahead and clean up all these other corners, including this box. We're gonna throw some finish on here so you can really get kind of the full effect of that grain wrap and see how cool that actually looks. All right, we got some finish on there. I put some Rubio, which we also carry in our store. In fact, everything I use from this video, I'm gonna put on Memorial Day sale since Memorial Day is tomorrow in the US. So everything in this video and a few other things will be on sale over on our website. I'll link that down below in the pinned comment. Now, these are what I would call perfect miters. They really are, they came out great. And if you can see how cool this grain wrap is, we'll do a close up here. It just is continuous and it makes your box look absolutely incredible. It's really a good way to do it. So miters are, like I said at the beginning, they are simple to do, but getting perfect miters is not simple. And if you use some of the tips and tricks we talked about in this video, I think you can have a lot of success with these joints, and they are phenomenally beautiful. One of the things you can do too, because miters, especially the bigger you get, the less strong they are, is you can add splines. This is a test piece from a video I did called 4 Ways to Do Miters Splines. A lot of cool ways to do those. You can really use those to make your box your own. You can make them different widths and heights and all these things and create like a really cool pattern. Really fun way to reinforce miters. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. Go check out our Memorial Day sale over at kmtools.com. And as always, stay safe in the shop.